My mother's voice was smooth, like she was asking me to pass the salt. "We just feel it's better if you're not in the photos, Elena," she said. She folded the soft lavender bridesmaid dress I had just paid for and placed it gently in a box as if it were a funeral. "It's your sister's day to be the star." My name is Elena Brooks, and I was 28 years old when my own family decided I was an inconvenience. For as long as I could remember, my older sister, Chloe, was the sun everyone orbited around. She was a successful lawyer about to marry an even more successful banker. She was the family's golden child, the one they bragged about at holiday dinners. And then there was me. I was the quiet one, tucked away in a tiny apartment in Chicago, running a small online graphic design business. To my parents, it wasn't a career. It was a cute little hobby, something to keep me busy, while I failed to live up to Chloe's example. I didn't have a fancy fiancé or a six-figure salary to announce over appetizers. All I had was my work, my creativity, and a quiet determination they constantly mistook for weakness. They saw my simple, focused life as a failure, a smudge on their otherwise perfect family portrait. But they were wrong. My quietness wasn't weakness. It was observation. And I had been watching them, listening to their subtle dismissals and thinly veiled insults for a very, very long time. The official request for my disappearance came 2 weeks before the wedding. We were at a high-end steakhouse downtown, the kind of place with dark wood walls and waiters who refold your napkin if you get up. It was my sister's fiancé, Mark, who had picked it. He spent the first hour of the meal loudly detailing their upcoming honeymoon in the Maldives, describing the overwater bungalows and private chefs. My parents just soaked it all in, nodding and smiling, their faces glowing with pride. The sound of clinking glasses and muffled chatter filled the air, but I felt like I was in a silent movie. Finally, after the plates were cleared, my father turned to me. He had a look of strained pity on his face, the one he always used when he was about to deliver bad news he thought was for my own good. "Elena, honey," he began, leaning forward slightly. "Your mother and I and Chloe, we've been talking." I braced myself. I knew this tone. "With your situation and everything," he continued, stumbling over the words. "We think it might be best if you just—" I stared at him. The ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to fade away. "My situation?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What situation?" Mark, who had been listening with a smug little smile, leaned in. "We just don't want any distractions on the big day, Elena. You know how it is. Family photos, speeches, it's cleaner this way." Distractions. Cleaner. That's what I was. A mess that needed to be cleaned up before the guests arrived. I slowly turned my head to look at Chloe, my sister, the person I'd built forts with, the one who taught me how to ride a bike. She was meticulously picking at a piece of leftover bread on her plate, refusing to meet my eyes. "It's just one day, Elena," she mumbled, her voice flat. "Don't make it a big deal." "A big deal?" She said it so easily, as if she were asking me to change a dinner reservation. The words didn't just sting, they felt like a physical blow, knocking the air right out of my lungs. It wasn't just my parents' decision. It was hers too. She was choosing her perfect wedding over her own sister. My mother, ever the pragmatist, delivered the final nail in the coffin. She reached across the table and patted my hand, her touch cold and brief. "We'll just tell everyone you came down with a bad flu. It's easier that way. We just want the day to be perfect for your sister." And that was it. My complete erasure from the most important family event of the decade was discussed and settled between the steak and dessert menus. They planned it with the same casual efficiency as hiring a florist. Right there in front of a smirking stranger, who was about to become my brother-in-law. I just sat there invisible, a ghost at their feast of celebration. The next day, I tried to salvage something. I thought maybe if I talked to Chloe alone, without our parents or her fiancé there, she would see how cruel this was. I called her in the afternoon, my heart pounding in my chest, straight to voicemail. I waited, staring at my phone, hoping she'd call back. A few minutes later, a text message bubble appeared on my screen. I opened it. A flicker of hope still alive. The message read, "Mom's right. Please don't make this a thing. I'm really busy with last-minute arrangements." I read it 3 times. The casual abbreviation please felt like another tiny twist of the knife. She couldn't even be bothered to type out the full word. She wasn't just agreeing with them. She was actively pushing me away, telling me my pain was an inconvenience to her party planning. The finality of it felt like a heavy door slamming shut in a long, dark hallway. There was no going back through it. But they weren't done yet. A week before the wedding, the next blow came. This time in a digital format for our entire extended family to see. My dad loved sending his cheerful family update emails. They were always filled with exclamation points and slightly blurry photos. This one was titled "The Final Countdown to the Big Day." He attached photos of Chloe's final dress fitting where she looked like a princess. There was a picture of them at the cake tasting, all laughing with frosting on their noses. Another showed them having a fancy brunch with Mark's parents. Everyone raising champagne glasses. Then, at the bottom of the email, there was a single sentence about me. Elena's taking some important personal time for herself right now, but she sends all her love. My hands started to shake as I read it. He wasn't just lying. He was crafting a story. He was painting a public narrative that I was unstable, that I was the one who had chosen to be absent. He was making me the problem so they could all remain the perfect supportive family. My own father was gaslighting our entire family tree to avoid any awkward questions. The absolute final proof of my irrelevance came 2 days later. I was scrolling aimlessly through Instagram, trying to numb my mind, when a story from my cousin popped up. It was a short video, shaky and loud with laughter. The video panned across a bright empty living room with huge windows. My parents, my aunts, my uncles, and Chloe and Mark were all there wearing jeans and t-shirts, carrying boxes and laughing. My cousin had written a caption in a bubbly pink font. Helping Chloe and Mark move into their amazing new home. Wedding gift from the parents. So jealous. I dropped my phone on the couch. A house. They had bought my sister a house. A whole house as a wedding gift. And they had never even mentioned it to me. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about everything. It was a clear, unmistakable message. I wasn't just being excluded from a party. I was being systematically and completely cut out of the family's life and future. They were building a new chapter, and I wasn't in it. As I sat there in the silence of my tiny apartment, a cold clarity washed over me. They were writing me out of the story. They had no idea I was about to write my own ending. What my family saw as me moping in my apartment was actually something else entirely. Their cruelty wasn't breaking me. It was forging me into something new, something sharper. That important personal time my dad had so generously announced to the family? I was using every second of it. I was finalizing the biggest deal of my entire life. My little online graphic design hobby, the one they had dismissed for years, had quietly grown into a successful business. I had clients from all over the country. A few months earlier, I had been approached by a new tech startup based in Austin, Texas. They were developing a revolutionary new app and wanted me to be their lead brand designer. After weeks of negotiation, they had sent me an incredible offer, a full-time position with a salary that made my hands tremble just looking at it. The offer required me to relocate. While they were busy planning a wedding, I was secretly planning an entire new life. They thought I was sitting in my dark apartment, crying into a pint of ice cream. In reality, the only glow in my room was from my laptop screen as I electronically signed a lease for a beautiful apartment in Austin. The rustling sounds in my apartment weren't tissues. It was the sound of me wrapping my dishes in newspaper and carefully placing them into boxes. Every ignored phone call, every dismissive text became the fuel for my escape. Every time they pushed me away, another box was taped shut and labeled kitchen or books. They thought they were just pushing me out of a one-day event. They had no idea they were pushing me toward the rest of my life. My vanishing act wasn't going to be for just one day. It was going to be forever. My only lifeline during this time was my best friend from college, Jessica. She had moved to Austin a few years ago and was my biggest cheerleader. We would FaceTime every night. I'd show her the growing stacks of boxes in my living room, and she'd show me pictures of the cool coffee shops and hiking trails near my new apartment. "Let them have their perfect boring party, Elena," she'd say, her voice fizzing with excitement. "Your new life is waiting for you. The second you land, We are getting the best breakfast tacos you've ever had. I've already made a list. Her unwavering support was a warm light in the cold shadow my family had cast. She saw my success when they only saw my failure. 3 days before the wedding, my family made one last condescending gesture. A courier dropped off a gift basket at my door. It was wrapped in crinkly cellophane and filled with cheap lavender-scented bath bombs, a cheesy romance novel, and some stale cookies. The sickly sweet smell of it filled my small entryway. Tucked inside was a card written in my mother's perfect looping cursive. "Thinking of you," it read. "We know this is hard, but it's for the best. We'll save you a piece of cake." I stared at the card. The condescension was breathtaking. They were so certain, so utterly convinced that I was sitting at home devastated and heartbroken over their decision. They saw me as a fragile child who needed to be placated with a basket of cheap trinkets. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I just felt done. I took the basket and dropped the entire thing into the dumpster behind my building. The point of no return came the night before the wedding. My apartment was nearly empty. Just a few last-minute items left to pack. Outside my window, the massive moving truck was already parked, ready for a 7 a.m. start. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was a voicemail from my dad. I pressed play and put it on speaker. "Hey, sweetie." His calm, patronizing voice filled the empty room. "Just calling to say, we love you. Tomorrow is a big day. Your sister is so excited. She'll send plenty of pictures. You understand? This is for the best." I listened to his words echo off the bare walls. He said, "We love you," with the same tone he used to say, "Pass the potatoes." It was a reflex, a hollow gesture. As I stood there listening to the man who had erased me, the low rumble of the moving truck's engine turning over outside felt like the sound of my future starting. There was absolutely no going back now. The wedding day arrived. The sky was a brilliant clear blue, the kind of day they would call perfect. As I directed the movers, guiding them with my couch and my bed, I imagined the scenes playing out across town. My mother helping Chloe with her veil. My father practicing his speech in the mirror. The organ music starting to play in the church. They were all smiling for photos I would never be in. Celebrating a family I no longer belonged to. Hours later, my apartment was completely empty. The only thing left was me and the deep echo of my own footsteps on the hardwood floors. It felt clean. It felt quiet. Around 4 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dad. I knew they'd be at the reception by now. A few glasses of champagne in. Feeling generous, I let it ring twice, took a deep breath, and answered, putting it on speaker. "Elena," he shouted, his voice booming over the loud sounds of a live band and the clatter of 100 people celebrating. "We wanted you to hear the speeches. Your sister looks so beautiful. Everyone is having such a wonderful time." I stood in the center of my empty living room and replied calmly, my own voice bouncing off the bare walls, creating a strange hollow sound. "That's nice, Dad." He paused. The background noise seemed to quiet for a second. "What's that echo? It's so loud. Where are you?" I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. This was the moment. "Oh, that's just my apartment," I said, my voice steady and clear. "The movers just finished loading the last box." Dead silence on his end. The music was still playing, but his voice was gone. "Movers," he finally stammered. "What are you talking about? What are you moving?" "Everything, Dad," I said. My tone as even as a frozen lake. "I'm moving. You all said it was better that I not be there. So I'm making it permanent. I won't be there anymore. Not in Chicago, not for Christmas, not for any of it. Not ever again." Before he could find the words to respond, before he could process the monumental shift that had just occurred, I ended the call. I didn't want to hear him yell or bargain or demand an explanation. They had their say at the steakhouse. This was mine. I immediately opened our family group chat. My fingers moved quickly. I sent 2 photos. The first was a wide shot of my completely empty apartment with the open door showing a sliver of the moving truck outside. The second was a clean, crisp screenshot of my signed employment contract for the new job in Austin with the 6-figure salary line item clearly visible. I typed one final message beneath the photos. "My situation is handled. Don't save me any cake." I hit send. Then without a moment's hesitation, I went down my contact list. Mom, Dad, Chloe, Aunt Carol, Uncle Mike. One by one, I pressed the block contact button. The silence that followed felt like the deepest, most satisfying breath I had ever taken. I didn't wait for a reply I would never receive. I walked out of that empty apartment for the last time, locked the door, and got into my car. The 16-hour drive to my new life stretched out before me. As I merged onto the highway, leaving the Chicago skyline behind in my rearview mirror, my phone started buzzing relentlessly. Calls from unknown numbers, a flood of texts from cousins and distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years. They were the frantic, confused messages from a party that had just been interrupted by a reality they never saw coming. I imagined the chaos erupting at the reception. My father pale and stammering, showing his phone to my mother. My sister in her perfect white dress, her perfect day suddenly shattered. Their perfect family portrait cracked right down the middle. They had wanted to make me feel small and invisible for one day, to tuck me away so I wouldn't spoil their picture. Instead, they gave me the incredible power to become invisible to them forever. For the first time in my life, their silence, the absolute total silence that now existed between us, didn't hurt me. It freed me. It was the sound of chains breaking. I turned up the music in my car, rolled down the windows, and drove south toward the rest of my life. And I never ever looked back. If you've ever had to prove your worth to those who doubted you, hit subscribe and tell me your story. Your voice matters here. Thank you for watching, and remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose.